I've been getting back into doing commission art lately, and this is one of them. And the version that you see in this video is not the final version that I want to do. Because when I finished this, I put it down and under the bright lights and stiff paper, and it will soak up all of the ink, which was kind of a problem because I was used to doing this with the sketchbook paper, which saturates instantly. And you can really see, especially on his neck and down near his shoulder, where the ink just wouldn't saturate the page, and it kind of wound up a little bit splotchy. And I think if this were a just total marker piece, that would have been really upsetting to me, but since this was being covered up with pencil, it didn't really matter, and in the end you couldn't really see that anyway. But the reason why I do this is that it actually makes significantly less work for the pencil in the end, because when you do just a colored pencil and you color on a rougher paper, you'll see little bits where the pencil couldn't go through all of the tiny little gaps in the paper. So what the marker does is it covers up as much of the white as possible so that the only thing showing through the pencil is the same color. And it's kind of a time-consuming process. There's a lot of time that goes into just putting down the marker and making sure that the marker is as smooth and even as possible. And this one, for some reason, I think it was mostly because of these really straight lines on the edges that I knew would be kind of difficult to do otherwise. I didn't tape it down. And I kind of regret that because it did make it really hard to edit this video, but oh well, I guess. But that is one thing that doing artwork digitally, which I do these sketches digitally, but that's not quite the same. But with working in something like Procreate, you can twist and turn your canvas around, and it makes it a lot easier to get the arches right. Like some of the lines in his hair and around his ears are just easier, especially to ink without it being taped down. And I did actually film the ink process, but it didn't come out very well because this camera is straight up above, and you can see that my hand is kind of blocking a lot. Normally I have a second camera at a more oblique angle, but I don't know what Windows Update did to my camera driver because it won't turn on. So I'm down to one camera for the time being, and I'm not sure what to do about it, but boy am I glad I got this other one, because if it were just the Logitech one that I've been using that all of a sudden doesn't work, I'd be very sad. So I kind of wish that I had taped it down, but I didn't, so oh well. But the buyer for this one wanted to see something similar to the portrait of Billy that I did. So I didn't want to just completely copy that, but I liked the really dramatic atmosphere and the lighting that it had. So in the portrait of Billy, he was kind of supposed to be like a little scared or shocked or surprised. I was going for a more tense emotion with that one. So with this one, I kind of wanted to keep that really dramatic lighting, but completely change the mood. So instead, he's got this really ridiculous grin, and I thought about including the sketch process from Procreate on this one, but it just didn't really happen. This video is already going to be super long because it has to be a little bit longer. Otherwise, the paper moving around like this was just impossible to follow. So at 16 minutes, it's already a little too long, so I didn't want to make it any longer than it needed to be. But I really like this maniacal grin, this big toothy grin, and I had such a hard time drawing it. It just did not want to work. And it took me forever to realize that it wasn't actually his grin that was the problem. It was his eyebrows. As soon as I fixed his eyebrows, it was fine. But this is kind of a more dramatic expression than I'm typically used to doing. So it was kind of an exercise in frustration there. It's also this looking up from below angle that I really like, but I've always really struggled with. So I think I really nailed the angle on this one. I really like his face. It just turned out so funny. And the lighting was great. I almost wish I had filmed what I did this morning with it, but at the end, just kind of glad I didn't. At the same time, it would have just been a big old hassle. And when I was doing this, I couldn't find my tiny little nub of an indigo pencil. As much as I'm kind of over Prismacolors, these are the ones that I was using because these are the ones that were the best behaved. They have the darker colors, they've got more consistent tones than some of my other sets, so this was a commission, so I wanted to make sure that it turned out as good as it could, but then I couldn't find my one dark blue, so I think I need to bite the bullet and buy myself a new set of pencils, and I'm really debating if I want to buy some more Prismacolors, maybe just go on Blick and buy the colors that I need individually. I've done that a few times in the past. Or maybe try to do a different brand. I don't actually know what I want to do, though. So, if you have any thoughts on professional grade pencils, I kind of prefer oil-based ones. I know Prismacolor is wax-based, which is kind of what gives me the problem with them. But mainly what I'm looking for, if you have any suggestions, are pencils that have a lot of darker tones. So dark blues, violets, browns, and blues especially. I don't shade with black. Shading with black would be any case impossible. So if you have any suggestions on pencils like that, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. Normally, I would turn the mic on so you can see everything that they have on the shelf and do all of that. But I can't because the world's on fire and I can't leave my house. So it's kind of hard to find new supplies that I want to use without spending money on supplies that I might not actually like. So that's the thing. But yeah, at this point I was really kind of starting to lose my confidence with this. I just didn't really like where we were going because I couldn't find because it arrives a little bit more safely and it can be displayed a little bit more nicely. So that's why I used it, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it. But I think I just need to get some more practice in with it and pretty much figure out what pencils to use, because I do like the colors that Prismacolor has. I've said this before. Prismacolor, of the pencils that I've used, has the best colors, but they're not the best pencils. So, I do have other pencils that I like more. Like some of the other brands, my Keeley pencils, I love those. I wish they were darker. And some of the other, I've got like 3 or 4 sets that, you know, if they were darker, I would use, but I don't. And another reason why I lay down the marker first before I even touch the pencils is because on a piece like this, where I wanted this really dramatic light, it's hard to get yellow to show up on a light color. Like the yellow shows up a lot better on his gray than it does on his white. But even his white is actually like a really light, warm gray. I didn't leave it completely white. Sometimes if I want something to be completely white, I will put down a colorless blender layer, just because it helps keep the texture on the paper consistent to do it that way. But if you just try to put the yellow down on white paper, it doesn't really show up that well. It gets kind of lost. So especially like on his blue, you can really see it, and in his hair and on his gray. The white just looks really, really bright. And then you can brighten that up even further by layering a little bit of white on top of it. And I tried to also get this rim light effect along his other side with some blue, but a lot of that wound up getting really lost as well, and I'm not sure where it went. I think where it went was the same place a lot of his line art went. It just kind of got buried under so many layers of pencil, which, not sure what happened there, honestly. Like, I do really love how it turned out. And you can see the piece as it is complete on my community page. And eventually some of the line art did come back, but I wound up actually having to imply quite a lot of it through just really heavy shading. And this is something that I would, I think, prefer to completely line it after the fact, but because these pencils are wax-based, you can't use the marker over them. So because of that, a lot of the lines just got buried underneath the pencil. And in the end, when I was kind of blending it out a little bit more this morning off camera, they did turn out a little bit better. Some of the lines finally started to show through. I also used my Pigma brush pen instead of my Copic one because I'm having a weird problem with my Copic brush liner. I don't know what the problem is, but the one that I really like to use has got a little split on the brush tip, and I'm not really sure how you fix that. And it was really making it difficult to keep my lines consistent, so I switched over to the Pigma one, which has a better tip. I think it can get much more fine lines. But then I was having the problem later on where it's apparently not quite as smudge proof as the Copic ones were. So some of the lines when I was doing the marker wound up really bleeding out and just did not look super great. So I wound up kind of having to fix some of that as well. And basically, I love how it turned out, but my goodness, it gave me some issues while I was working on it. But these are the kinds of pieces that I really love doing the most, I think, are these really goofy portraits. And at this point, I was kind of thinking that it was done, that this was about as good as it was going to get. And then once I turned off the light, I kind of changed my mind. But the buyer said that he was looking for something that could be used as a profile pic. So I wanted to add a little bit more color to the back, and I decided that instead of maybe adding color, having a really dark background would look really nice. Then he could be kind of standing out from it. So that's what I decided to do here, was I was just giving him a little bit of a white line around the entire character and the background graphic so that he'd stand out from it. And It kind of wound up a little bit splotchy, again, because it's just the Bristol board, that's the way it is, but I think it really did tie the entire piece together. And the tape that I was using to mask off the edges didn't give me the completely crisp lines that I might have wanted, but they weren't bad either. They're just a little bit fuzzy because it bleeds through the paper, not on top of it, but it wasn't as bad as I had expected it to be. I actually expected it to look a lot worse. I just wanted it to have consistent edges, and it mostly managed to be pretty sharp. But in a few places it bled through, not very badly though. But this guy was a lot of fun. The buyer wanted to see the speed paint, so it's probably going to jump the queue a little bit. But here you go. I will, like I said, post the finished version on the community page so that you can see the more detailed shading. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that fun stuff. And I will see you next time. Bye!